"You don't belong here." "Then why are you so afraid I showed up?" That line sliced through the thick air of a state courtroom in Georgia, where every gaze turned toward the one person no one expected. A black woman, faded gray shirt, apron still stained with dish soap, standing at the courtroom door, left hand clutching a worn-out folder, right hand raised, cutting through the silence. "I'll represent the defendant." The entire room froze. No one spoke. A few people laughed. Others pulled out their phones, ready to record what they assumed would be the cheapest joke in this state's legal history. Sitting on the defense bench was Caleb Roth, tech billionaire, face of charity campaigns and social media spotlights. Also the man accused of embezzling over $100 million from public health funds through shady contracts, ghost documents, and lists of non-existent patients. His lawyer vanished without a trace that morning. And now, the person volunteering to take his defense was a housekeeper. Who is she supposed to be? Wash the sheets, then read us the law? The prosecutor sneered. The officers placed their hands on their holsters. No one cared to ask her name. They only saw her skin, her fabric slippers, the kitchen apron. But she didn't need them to say her name. She made sure they would remember it. Imani Rousseau. That name would be spoken in legal programs, in law school lectures and headlines, and whispered down courthouse hallways. Not because of who she was, but because she walked into the very place they told her she didn't belong and dared to stand her ground. Because truth doesn't need a degree. It just needs the courage to be spoken in the one place they try hardest to silence it. Before she became the housekeeper who dared to stand at the defense table, Imani Rousseau was once the rising star of Emory University's law school. A little black girl from the rough streets of South Atlanta who used to read court rulings instead of fairy tales, who stood at the center of the debate team like she was born to argue. But hope in the place she grew up never lasted long. At 21, her mother, Kendra Rousseau, was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. There was a sliver of hope, until the hospital denied treatment because her insurance didn't meet the new policy criteria. A policy quietly adjusted by a company backed and manipulated from behind the scenes by none other than Caleb Roth. Imani dropped out, not because of grades, not because she gave up, but because her mother needed someone at her side every day, and the bills wouldn't wait. She took every job no future lawyer ever imagined. Mopping hotel floor, scrubbing hospital toilet, even washing corpses for a funeral home. Then her mother passed. And justice for Imani died the day her mother closed her eyes. From that moment on, she no longer believed in courtrooms, no longer trusted the people in suits standing in the center of the room, speaking pretty words while knowing nothing about the cost of being poor. Until one morning, 3 years later, while setting out breakfast at the Roth household, she happened to pick up a modified contract crumpled among napkins, next to a jammed printer. Curious, she read it. A strange legal term. An unusual seal. An IP address registered overseas. And then a name. Kendra Rousseau. She froze. No, it couldn't be. From that day on, she started studying law again. From shredded documents thrown away. From podcasts whispered through earbuds while scrubbing floors. From photocopied textbooks borrowed from the community library. The dining table became her desk. The laundry room, her library. And pain became the only fuel guiding her back into the fight she once had to walk away from. Imani Rousseau didn't wait for permission. She stepped into the courtroom like she carried the souls of those the system had long forgotten. And sitting on the defendant's bench was the man who had once decided her mother's fate with a single click of a mouse. Caleb Roth. Tall, salt and pepper slicked back hair, custom-tailored suit, eyes cold, like the world was a game and he owned the board. But when he saw her, the housekeeper walking toward him, he frowned. "Don't think I need you," he muttered through clenched teeth. You live off my money. Imani didn't blink. You live by slowly killing people like my mother. They both knew this wasn't just an exchange of words. It was a declaration of war. She wasn't there to save him. She was there to expose a system that wore the law like a mask and used money to bury the truth. The folder in her arms was what he feared most. Inside it were a series of contracts meticulously altered, IP addresses traced back to Zurich, and timestamps that didn't match Caleb's official travel logs. Metadata edits proving signatures were copy-pasted, like a Photoshop job by someone morally bankrupt. Imani knew she had no law degree, no office, no business card, no official standing. But she had the truth. And truth, when spoken from a heart that has known the depths of despair, is more dangerous than any argument found in textbooks. I'm not here to represent you, she said, locking eyes with Caleb, voice steady. I'm here to speak for those who died without anyone bothering to write their obituary. The trial hadn't started, but the war had. And from that moment on, America would be forced to ask itself, if justice had a face, could it be the face of a woman in an apron? Imani hadn't slept in 2 nights. She knew a forged document doesn't appear out of nowhere. An IP trace doesn't just lead to Zurich by accident. Someone on the inside had created the breach and sent it out like a silent confession. She began tracing the metadata on the fake contract, and a name surfaced: Jonas Quinn, Caleb Roth's closest aide. Always standing just behind him, unnoticed, unimportant to most. But the one who handled all paperwork, early drafts, closed-door meetings with no recordings. Except Jonas had gone missing 2 weeks ago. Right before the trial began, Imani found his apartment in Midtown. The door had a temporary seal. No signs of forced entry on the lock. She circled to the back, and it opened. The apartment was ice cold. Furniture untouched. Old food still in the fridge, but not a soul in sight. In the corner of the bedroom, a safe left wide open. Inside, only 2 things remained: a silver USB drive, no label, and a strip of bloody gauze. The blood had dried, but still dark red, enough for her to know someone had been silenced. Police later ruled it a voluntary disappearance. No evidence of foul play. No expanded investigation. But Imani knew. It wasn't voluntary. It was a warning. A quiet way to erase every mouth that might dare speak. She slipped the USB into her pocket, heart pounding like war drums. What was on it, she didn't know yet. But if Jonas was the only one inside that system who still had a conscience, then he was the next target, and the only thread she had left. Time was running out. And for the first time in years, Imani didn't feel fear as something foreign, but something walking beside her every single step. The only thing worse than knowing the truth was knowing someone was out there, hunting it down to bury it. The silver USB had no label, no note. Just one file, archive/contract 001 on PDF. Imani opened it in silence, fingers hovering over the keys, eyes scanning every line like her life depended on it. It was a medical partnership contract signed between Alter Group and Caleb Roth's company 8 years ago. Lifeless numbers. Financial jargon. And then a name appeared, like a knock at the door from hell. Imani Rousseau, position, mid-level legal approval office. Status, contract verified, signed. Imani froze. Her mother, the woman who once told her, "I'm just doing some internal accounting, sweetheart." The woman who died in pain after being denied insurance from the very system she had once worked for. Imani searched her memory. That night, her mother came home, eyes exhausted, a faint red smear like ink on her sleeve. The night she took down a group photo of Alter Group employees from the wall and threw it in the trash. "Work stuff's not something you need to worry about," she had said. Now Imani understood. Her mother had been forced to sign, used as a legal shield for a corrupt contract. And when she started asking questions, they fired her, cut her insurance, let her die quietly, unnoticed, unspoken. Imani didn't cry. Tears couldn't erase this pain. Only justice, spoken out loud, could give her mother rest. He didn't just steal healthcare money from millions, Imani whispered. He killed my mother. She printed the contract, hands trembling as she signed the back. Exhibit A, Rousseau evidence. This was no longer a trial. This was a funeral. And for the first time, someone had come to speak her mother's name and reclaim her dignity. Imani returned to her apartment late in the afternoon. The kitchen still carried the faint smell of instant noodles she hadn't finished the night before. The faucet dripped steadily, tick, tick, tick. Everything looked untouched. But something was wrong. The door was locked, but loose. The lock had been turned, subtly. Not by someone in a rush, but by someone who knew exactly how to get in. She stepped inside, heart pounding. The living room was silent. Laptop still in place. Papers undisturbed. It wasn't until she turned around that she saw it. Etched into the wall behind the sofa, deep, deliberate, cold. You speak, he dies. The words were carved clean. Straight lines. No panic. No mess. Not a warning, but a quiet sentence. And she knew instantly who he was. Malik, her younger brother. A sophomore med student, prepping for finals. He was the reason she survived her darkest years. When their mother died, when Imani cleaned corpses to feed him, to keep him in school. Now he was the hostage of her silence. No need for chains. Just fear and the patience to watch her break. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't panic. She packed Malik's things in 10 minutes, put him on a night bus, and sent him to stay with an old friend in Kentucky. Don't ask anything, just study. And don't come back until I tell you. Malik wanted to speak. But he knew, and hugged her tight for a long time. When the bus doors closed, Imani turned away. She didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. Not when this fight had already outgrown the courtroom. At the same time, in a pre-trial conference across town, a name appeared on the docket. Carlton Dean, her former law professor. The man who once told her, law is a double-edged blade. It's only safe in the hands of someone who fears blood. Now, he stood on the plaintiff's side. Lead counsel, representing Alter Group. The man who taught her justice now wielded the blade against her. The second time Imani stepped into the courtroom, there were no laughs. No one mocked the apron anymore. They had heard her speak. And now they had no choice but to watch her face off against the man who once taught her how to file a lawsuit. Carlton Dean, Medal of Honor in Law. Professor who trained hundreds of black attorneys, the same man who gave soaring speeches about justice at graduation ceremonies. He entered like a statesman. Gray suit, deep blue tie, his smile still confident. But Imani didn't smile. She stood across from him like a distorted reflection of the man he used to be. No stage. No reverence. Only the law and the truth. You once said, law only holds value when the hands wielding it are clean. So tell me, Professor, are your hands clean? Then she pulled out a folder and walked straight to the bench. No shaking. No hesitation. Letter to Jonas Quinn, dated July 3rd. You instructed alterations to insurance records to match the goals of a contract restructuring. You wrote, just erase the timestamp. No one will ever know. Carlton went still. His hand touched his briefcase and trembled. No one in the room moved. No need for witnesses. His own words were the indictment. Then a sound. A chair scraped back. A young man stood. Elijah Vance, final year student, former TA to Carlton. I have a copy of the file you told me to delete due to system overload. I kept it. Another student stood. So do I. You asked me to erase a recording of Alter's internal meeting, but I downloaded the original. A domino effect. The celebrated professor, now being unmasked by the very students he taught. Imani stared straight at him. You taught me justice. But you only chose justice when it came with a price tag. I didn't. Carlton said nothing. And for the first time in his career, he had no words left to defend himself. The courtroom door creaked open. A young woman stepped in, hoodie pulled over her head, shoulders trembling. She didn't look at anyone. Her eyes fixed on the floor, as if she were walking across a minefield. But every step she took made the room fall deeper into silence. My name is Elise Tran, she said, her voice cracking at the end. I was an internal auditor at Alter Group, and I was the one ordered to falsify the budget figures in the case files. A murmur spread like ripples through the room. Imani quietly rose from her seat, walked over, and placed a steady hand on the girl's trembling arm. You don't have to be afraid anymore, Elise, she said gently. They can't hurt you, not now that the truth is in the light. The state's attorney objected immediately, but the judge cut in. The witness will be accepted under federal protection, given the gravity of the testimony. Elise reached into her bag and pulled out a printed document. A copy of an internal budget sheet, marked confidential, with the heading, Roth Lawsuit Projections, Q2, estimated revenue from verdict, $64.7 million. This wasn't just corruption. Alter Group had planned the lawsuit as a business strategy. One line in the document made the entire courtroom hold its breath. If necessary, sacrifice the defendant, prioritize brand integrity. The courtroom fell silent. But outside, the silence shattered. News spread like wildfire. Alter Group accused of fabricating lawsuit to seize federal funds. Whistleblower exposes falsified data, calls for full investigation. Housekeeper at center of decade's biggest healthcare scandal. The nation erupted. And at the heart of the storm wasn't Caleb Roth. Wasn't Alter Group. It was Imani Rousseau. She wasn't just a voice for the truth. She had done what no one dared do, kicked to open a door that power had locked shut for decades. The final hearing ended in a silence that felt almost sacred. The court dismissed the entire case. The ruling was clear: collusion, falsified evidence, conspiracy to misappropriate public funds. Caleb Roth, escorted out of court, awaiting federal investigation. Carlton Dean, the once revered professor, suspended from duty, pending review by the Legal Ethics Board. The media called it a historic trial. CNN ran it nonstop. People marched with signs. Truth wears an apron. Imani for justice. But while the country celebrated, Imani quietly walked back to her old apartment. One chair had a broken leg. The laundry was still damp. The calendar on the wall still marked her next cleaning shifts. She still didn't have a law degree. Still didn't hold a license to practice. Still worked hourly jobs. Still wore an apron, moving through a world of polished suits and spotlights, unseen. Justice came, she thought. But I still haven't been seen, until the envelope arrived. Ivory-colored, hand-delivered. Inside, a worn business card. Elijah Monroe, former Supreme Court Justice, a legend in civil rights law. And a handwritten note, careful and clear. I've followed every step you've taken. If you're ready, I'd like to train you. No tuition, no conditions. Because America needs voices like yours, and the law needs hands that have touched pain. Imani didn't cry. She simply folded the letter, placed it beside her mother's photo, then turned back to the dining table, flipped on the light, and reopened the case file. Not to relive the victory, but to prepare for the road ahead. Because justice, she now knew, doesn't live forever in verdicts. It lives in the next choice you make. 1 year later, Atlanta shifted seasons. Where the streets had once been flooded with headlines, scandal, trials, a collapsing empire. Now something new stood. Small, humble. But with a line stretching out from 6 a.m., a wooden sign hung in front, bearing just 4 words, justice from below. No ribbon cutting. No cameras. Just folding chairs, a whiteboard, photocopied forms, and a team of volunteers. Some were first-year law students. Some were once housekeepers, just like Imani. A project offering free legal help to immigrants who didn't know their rights, domestic workers exploited and unpaid, employees fired for speaking up, and young black students who once believed the law isn't made for people like me. Imani didn't choose to become a lawyer. She became shelter for voices too small to be heard, voices long drowned by wealth, power, and bias. She didn't teach how to win in court. She taught how to rise from places no one believed were even part of the map. Justice doesn't start in court. It starts where no one thinks it matters. It starts in the kitchen, by the laundry. In the glances people ignore every single day. That afternoon, the Atlanta sun softened. On the wall beside the small office, a new mural had just been finished. It showed a woman in an apron standing tall, clutching a worn folder in her arms. Behind her, not an open door, but a wall shattered. The words beneath her feet read, "She didn't ask to enter. She broke the wall." Imani stood before the painting, silent. Not to admire, but to remember that every door that was ever locked didn't need a key. Only someone brave enough to turn their pain into a hammer.